Thank you so much. What a delight to have the two of you here on stage. We are about to begin the audience Q&A. I'm Cynthia Connolly, Director of Programming here at the City Club of Cleveland, and we are joined by author Charlayne Hunter-Gault, the 2023 Lifetime Achievement Award winner with the Ennisfield Wolf Book Awards. Moderating the conversation is Helen Maynard, editor of Signal Cleveland. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, and those joining via our live stream at cityclub.org or live radio broadcast at 89.7 WKSU Idea Stream Public Media. If you'd like to text a question for our speaker, you can text it to 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794. And our City Club staff will do our best to work it into the program. May we have the first question, please?
Thank you so much, and this was not prearranged. Would you, and thank you, from those days at the University of Georgia down to now, would you comment on your experience and Ron's experience in South Africa on special assignment, but in different lanes, and your interaction and friendship with President Mandela?
Now, this is one of my heroes right here. So let's just, I don't miss a Sunday listening to his son, Otis III, and if he happens to be there, him, so it's like, but that was a setup. No, you know, my husband, Ron, and I lived in South Africa for 17 years. Ron at J.P. Morgan Bank, that was before it got into the trouble it's in today, and I for first NPR and then CNN, and then I stopped to write a book about Africa because Africa was always covered in terms of the 4 Ds: death, disease, disaster, and despair. And there's more to the country than that. But having the comment in relationship to the question I just was asked, there is a lot of despair in Africa generally, and especially in South Africa, where they have no electricity 8 hours a day, and where the poor communities are even poorer and being abused by people who are desperate, and that doesn't excuse lawlessness, and some of it is just taking advantage of the situation, but some of it is born out of desperation. And so it's a very difficult time, including a lack of principled leadership. And the people who are now challenging the leadership, which is, as I said, unprincipled for the most part, are similarly unprincipled. Don't quote me, please. I don't plan to go back anytime soon, so you can quote me. No, it's a challenging time for the country because the country has major problems, and yet the leadership is not living up to its responsibilities of ensuring that all of the citizens are taken care of. So it's a place, there are organizations that you can participate, you can help support with money or, you know, publicity or whatever, but, you know, and then you asked about Mandela. There've been even today, some backlash against his leadership, but I think that the sacrifices that Mandela and his people who went to prison for freedom for the country and against apartheid did a great job. And I know that Americans don't like Thabo Mbeki because of the position that he took on HIV, but he was principled. He was not corrupt. And he took an incorrect position on AIDS, but you can't accuse him of the things that the current leadership is guilty of. And the people who are standing in line to succeed the current president are in no better shape. Mandela left a legacy, and I'll tell you a real quick story. When I first sat down to interview him, you know, when he gets out of prison, everybody in the world wants to interview him. And my producer called me in New York and said, "You heard the news, the clerk is freeing Mandela." I said, "Have you made a reservation?" She said, "I got a reservation." About that time, my editor called, Les Crystal, and he said, "You've heard the news?" I said, "Yes, and Jackie's made our reservations to get, you had to go then to London and then down. You couldn't go straight like you can now." And so I said, "Okay." He said, "Well, let me just talk to Jim Lehrer, and I'll get back to you." So he calls back and he said, "Jim said that, you know, PBS always struggling for, you know." He said, "Jim said they can only afford to send you if you can guarantee an interview with Mandela." I said, "Of course I can guarantee an interview with Mandela." Anyway, well, I had kept up with them over the years as time had gone. I'd been there in '85. So we get there, and I said to them, "Look, I want to be the last one," because there were journalists from all over the world there. And I said, and everybody else was getting 10 minutes. I said, "Could I get half an hour?" And they said, "Yeah, you can get half an hour." So we get to the end. They've been interviewing Mandela all day, and they say, "Okay, it's time for you." And I said, "You know, this man has been in prison for 27 years, and he's been sitting there all day, not even taking a break. Now, this is a little bit treacherous. I'm on, you know," I said, "but could he just stop and have a cup of tea before I do my interview?" And they thought, "Oh yeah, that's a good," you know, none of them had experience with journalists, so this is all very new. So he goes in, he has a cup of coffee or tea or whatever, and then he comes back out and he sits down, and I want to establish myself as being different from the other journalists, right? So I start to say, "Mr. Mandela, you know, I come out of the American Civil Rights Revolution." And before I could get the rest of it out of my mouth, he says, "Oh, do you know Miss Maya Angelou?" Now, the truth of the matter is I didn't know her personally, but of course I knew her work. So I said, "Oh, yes, sir." Now, everybody in there is looking for a scoop. All these journalists from all over the world. He asked me about Maya Angelou, and I said yes. And he says, "Well, we read," and he always spoke in the third person. "We read all of her books while we were in prison." And I said, "Ooh, I just got a scoop." Nobody else had anything about what he had been doing while he was, you know, they were all asking him political questions, you know, but I had something nobody else had. And then we began to have a good friendship. And of course, the woman who he hired to help bridge the gap between the apartheid people and the liberation people hated me, because every time Mandela would see me, he would respond to me, but she wanted to be the one to make the decisions about who he talked to. So every time he had a press conference, I would make a point of going up to him and whispering something in his ear. And one time, I went up to him and I said, "Madiba," I said, "I saw," he was early 90s, I said, "You read that whole thing without even no glasses. What did you?" He said, "Oh, I have a very good doctor. His name is so-and-so." And I said, "Because I'm, you know, getting to the point." He said, "Well, this is who he is, and you call him and you tell him and meanwhile, she's going nuts." But anyway, I didn't even mention her name because I can't even remember it. But we had a very good relationship, and I think that despite the fact that there's some brushback now about him, that's just the way life is, and I think that he will always have the position that he and Dr. King and all of those who have fought for equality and human rights deserve to have.
Okay, I think we have another question.
And I'll be brief in your answer.
I'll try to be. You have been my hero for 60 years. I was a junior in high school in Atlanta, Georgia, when your courage in the face of rioters brought down the entire legal framework of American apartheid in Atlanta. Your courage kept my school open and integrated for my senior year, where I happened to be editing the school newspaper. In one of the first 4 desegregated schools in Georgia. Thank you, and I'm so glad to finally see you in person.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We have another question here.
I too hail from an Atlanta, Covington, Orlando family. My father was accepted by UGA Law School in the mid-1940s.
Ooh.
And when it was discovered that he was black, and I don't know how they couldn't figure it out because he was a Morehouse grad, his admission was rescinded, and he was given financial support to attend law school in the North, which I have since heard was a fairly common practice. So he graduated from law school here in Cleveland. I just had to take this opportunity to thank you for having the courage to walk through the open door that my father helped to crack open. I too am one who had to walk through a cracked open door after the assassination of Dr. King in the Ivy League. So I know what it must have been like for you, so thank you. You're my hero.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Trying to get to as many questions as possible. We have another question.
You talked about earlier about trying to change Black history in schools. You talked about change to make it politically. How would you understand? How would you say we can bring dignity back to our young people?
How to bring
Dignity back to to our young people. All the things that you went through going through a segregated school system. Segregated college. Now, how we as our younger people can appreciate about having dignity for themselves. Of all the things that you went through. Yeah. What would your advice would be?
So I think if you summarize it, we aren't seeing ourselves. Is it important to see ourselves, and how do we see ourselves, and how can we teach younger people better to relate to the world?
Well, that's why I think we have to fight these efforts to either eliminate or remove some of our history from the schools. Even Toni Morrison, didn't somebody just mention Toni Morrison in here a few minutes ago? She's being blackballed in some schools in the South. And probably anybody you can think of who's done wonderful contributions to our literature and to other aspects of our lives are being eliminated from schools. And I think that's what's important, to keep those in there and to keep fighting. Because I keep saying that our history is our armor. That history, going back to the first slave ships, we've got a history that even though there are times in it that are depressing and sad, like slavery and all of that, we've also had people who fought against the systems that keep some of us down. And that history needs to be taught. And if we are properly taught, then I think our society is going to be a better place for all of us. But if you keep eliminating stories and authors and people who have interpreted our lives and our circumstances, it's not going to happen. So that's a fight that needs to be fought on a daily, hourly basis in radio and television every single place you can think of, because our children are being denied their heritage. And that's black kids and white kids and Asian kids and Indian kids. It's all of our people. We have to make sure that these efforts to eliminate our history, rather than having efforts that polish our armor. And that's why I'm hoping my book will help polish the armor, because these aren't about, many of the people in this book are not heroes. They're just ordinary people living their lives. And some are heroes. But I think that that's one of the biggest challenges we have in this country today, to fight the system that's trying to eliminate our history.
We have another question.
Yes. Hello, my name is Kyle Williams. I'm 15 and I go to MC Square STEM High School. And I wanted to know about, what did you think about how people in the LGBTQ plus community are fighting for their rights currently against the government who doesn't want them, such as Florida and places like Texas.
Oh.
Yeah, Texas and Florida. And Ohio, yeah. But like, no, I just wanted to know what you think about those people who are currently fighting for their rights, and if you can kind of find any similarities between the Black History movement, or maybe just like how the kitchen story, how the Jewish people were able to explain to you their heritage, and how they're also currently erasing LGBTQ history, such as book banning and banning certain media. And I just wanted to know your opinion on that.
Thank you for the question. It fits in, it's a part of this total thing that there's no difference. I mean, in my book, there's a piece that I did about the LGBTQ people in South Africa, some of whom were being murdered, the women especially, were being raped and murdered, and I went around with a bunch of them as they were attempting to see if they couldn't create systems that were more protective of them. And so it's no different. I mean, it's the same. Discrimination is discrimination. Whether it's against LGBTQ people, or whether it's against Black people or Asian people or whatever. Discrimination is discrimination against people. And even people who've been to prison, many of them get reformed in prison and they come out and they need to be supported. And so it's very important to be educated to your community and your surroundings and the people and what they're going through, so that you can be supportive of them. They're people too, right? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I'm from the Cleveland School of the Arts. I am a junior and a creative writing major. I'm sure, as you know, there have been several book bannings and book burnings, and there's a wave of censorship coming over our country. I wanted to know what advice you would give young writers such as myself in this trying time on the writing community.
Good question. And I'm going to give you my card so you can email me some of the things you've written. I think you just have to look at the history of good writers and people who've been successful in their work. And we are in a trying time right now, as we just talked about, the discrimination against so many of our named people. But you just have to keep at it. And find the people who can be supportive, people that you can talk to and who can help you. I'm sure you have a teacher or more than one teacher who can help you along the way. And that's very important, to just keep at it if that's your passion. It was my passion from the time I was 5 years old and read about the comic strip character Brenda Starr. And here's also something: you need support if you can get it from family and friends. When I told my mother, I was about 5 or 6 years old, living in a segregated community in Covington, Georgia. And I said to my mother, I just read about Brenda Starr, and I think I want to grow up to be Brenda Starr. My mother didn't say, that's not what little black girls like you can do. My mother said, oh, my mother was very understated, but very firm. She said, if that's what you want to do. And that was all the inspiration I needed. And then I go to my black school, and I learn about Ida B. Wells. And so I went from Brenda Starr, traveling the world in search of people, to Ida B. Wells, and then Zora Neale Hurston, and you know, they are models for you to learn from and to be inspired by. And I'm going to give you, as I said, my card. So if your teacher can't give you the solutions, I will send you some.
Thank you so much, everyone. I know we had a lot of questions here in the audience today. If you did not get a chance to talk with Charlayne, we will be selling her book out there in the Commons. Feel free to get in line, grab one of her books, and have a chance to ask that question with her in the book line. We are limited stock. If you do not get a hard copy, please make sure to pre-order that book. Third Space Reading Room, our bookseller out there, will be happy to ship that to you. And we do have a book plate there where you can get it signed and still talk with Charlayne in the book line. Today's forum is presented in partnership with the Anisfield Wolf Book Awards and is part of the City Club's Authors in Conversation series presented in collaboration with Cuyahoga County Arts and Culture and Cuyahoga County Public Library. Today's forum is also the Stephen A. Minter Endowed Forum. Mr. Minter spent his life in pursuit of justice. He was the first African American to lead the Cleveland Foundation, the Cuyahoga County Welfare Department, Massachusetts Public Welfare Commission, and what's now the American Public Human Service Association. He was also the founding undersecretary of the U.S. Department of Education. We are grateful to those who endowed this forum and to the Minter family, we have Robin here with us today, for their long-standing support of the City Club. The City Club would also like to welcome students joining us from the Cleveland School of the Arts, Kenneth Clement Boys Leadership Academy, MC Squared STEM High School, and the City Club Youth Forum Council. We would also like to welcome guests at the tables hosted by Anisfield Wolf, the Center for Community Solutions, Cuyahoga Community College, the Greater Cleveland Association of Black Journalists, Huntington, the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, and the Literacy Cooperative. Thank you all for being with us here today. Next week, the City Club has 4 forums for you, all of which you can check out at cityclub.org. But first, on Wednesday, October 4th, the City Club will be back at the Happy Dog in the Gordon Square Arts District. This will be our 10th year of hosting free Happy Dog Takes On series, and that evening we'll be talking about the important role independent venues serve our communities as third spaces and the live entertainment ecosystem. Idea Stream's Amanda Rabinowitz will lead the conversation with Sean Watterson of Happy Dog and Cindy Barber with the Beachland Ballroom. And just announced, the City Club's 2023 annual meeting and community open house will be hosted on Friday, October 27th. We will have Craig Hassel, President and CEO at Playhouse Square, in conversation with Dan Moulthrop here at the City Club about the intersection of free speech and the art of the spoken word. Immediately following the forum, you are all invited to join us for a celebration, reception, and free community open house from 1 to 4 p.m. Help us welcome us into our new home right here in Playhouse Square. You can learn more about this and other forums at cityclub.org. Thank you, members and friends of the City Club. My name is Cynthia Connolly, and this forum is now adjourned. Have a good weekend.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
For information on